Hi, Dr. Connie.
Hi, Leslie. How are you?
Good. How are you doing?
Good.
So, today we're going to be recording part 2 of our Meet Dr. Connie series. Last week was really, really good. It was all about your health and your relationships throughout your life and how that impacted your health throughout your journey. And we got some good feedback. So, I'm excited to go a little bit further with you in this episode and talk even more about your personal health journey.
Yeah, sure.
All right, so let's go ahead and start with, how did your health journey start? From what I've heard from you, you were always a health and wellness junkie. Is that correct?
Yeah, for sure. Um, I think as I shared about the relationships, the vanity metrics, I learned how vain I was when I got sick. And that allowed me to reflect on exactly what health and wellness meant for me. It mainly meant looking the part. I grew up in a family where my mother was very much all about the vanity. Women have to be pretty. Women have to do all the things. We grew up in that, I guess, conditioning, so to speak. And I always felt like beauty was something that you have to strive for. And to really feel the self-worth, you had to be a certain size, look a certain way, and have certain kind of hair, have certain kind of skin, all those things. And my health and wellness started when I was a teenager. I found Jane Fonda because it was a way for me to get toned and lean. And I got super interested in fitness. I didn't know it back then, but I started to have very, very, very negative relationship with my food because my mom would control and make comments about my body that I didn't understand back then. I just knew that I didn't live up to the standards. And I think in my young mind, it was sort of negating my own self-worth without even realizing. And
Mhm.
this impossible like standard just stuck with me. And I just became very perfectionistic when it came to a certain way I looked. But here's the thing, I had a twin sister who can eat just about anything and she'd be like 90 pounds. And here's me. I wasn't heavy, at most like 112, but I was taller than her, 2 inches taller than her. So that was legitimate, but she was still thinner boned, I think. And I was always compared to her. And so the more I obsessed about the eating, I learned that the more weight I gained. And I remember feeling very inflamed at the onset of me starting the master's degree program. And then when I started the master's degree program, I enrolled in, or the bachelor's degree was psychology. During college, my weight really wasn't a problem, but in my eyes, it always was. And so I started to develop this very negative relationship with food. And when I enrolled and I decided to study nutrition, become a registered dietitian, because it was something that I loved, and it's what was very important to me, I adopted a vegan lifestyle. And that vegan lifestyle got me really, really sick. And I didn't know it at the time, but I was one of those people who hates cooking. My mom always did the cooking for me, and in my family anyway. And I didn't even know how to cook anything in grad school. But here I was adopting a brand new vegan diet and not knowing how to cook. So I think even though it was vegan, quote unquote, it wasn't all that healthy. Maybe
Mhm.
I was malnourished. Maybe I was too stressed. I don't know what I can tell you, but I remember feeling always so fatigued.
So, is it safe to say that the reason you would do exercise or eat a certain way was to look a certain way, not so much to better your health?
Yeah, I just thought that health and wellness was part of me, and that was a given. And health and wellness to me at that time was all about looking a certain way and weighing a certain number. It wasn't
Mhm.
about, and how I looked in my clothes was my health and wellness. That was more important to me. In fact, I don't think I ever even considered health and wellness because at that age, you never go to the doctor, you never have any issues. And you think, even though I was studying all these chronic illnesses through my registered dietitian program, I just knew that, my health was always guaranteed.
Mm-hmm. Right. So you were studying for your master's in nutrition, and that's when you adapted the vegan lifestyle, right? So what did your life look like in school? What were your habits like aside from the vegan lifestyle?
I would go wake up super early in the morning, like at 5 a.m., and I would go for a run and do high intensity step aerobics exercise that was in back then, and doing a lot of step masters or treadmills or running on the tracks. And I would do it before the crack of dawn, because if you remember my first episode, because I always felt like I was never good enough, I had to work twice, 3 times harder. I always got some kind of satisfaction from knowing that I was up and done with all my activities before anybody got up. And so I used to wake up sometimes 4, sometimes 5, but those were my numbers. And I would be up and go head over to the gym and start my day, and then go to classes and just eat as little as possible was, I think, the goal, but everything was vegan.
So what did those vegan foods look like in that day?
Back then, they used a lot of vegan, like meat-like products. They made it out of gluten. Those of you who don't know, it's so that the chewy part of the gluten. And they would make like meat substitutes or sausages with a lot of additives. They didn't have the organic kinds today. It was riddled with so much preservatives. Or I would just load up on the low fat or fat free carb packaged goods like Snackwell, which is considered to be devil's food today. Little did I know that was adding to my inflammation, add stress of exercise, stress of school, stress of my own self-worth, and all the things that I have to keep up. And my body was saying no, but I didn't know it at the time.
Mm-hmm. So it seems like stress was a commonality with all your habits, right?
Yeah, because before I paid attention to being healthy, but that meant being a certain size, the more stressed I got, because it wasn't under my control sometimes,
Mm-hmm.
Learn to really adjust and really structure my days around eating a certain way. And I don't even know half the things that I ate, but it was like fake cheese on tortilla and salsa chips, and those are all quote unquote vegan. I was studying vegetarian diet from my school, but yes, I was eating a lot of vegetables, like soup plantation back then, or sweet tomatoes here in the East was in thing. And I would load up and eat my heart out there, but didn't consider all the macronutrients as well as micronutrients so much, again, because I wasn't concerned about my health. I just felt like vegan,
Mm-hmm.
or whatever.
Yeah, I think a lot of people can relate to that because there's so many diets today, right? So
yeah,
would you say that people tend to look for what's the best diet without taking into consideration what's best for their body? Because what might work for them might not work for you or for me, right?
Yeah, that's what I learned is, honestly, food today means so differently than back then, because now I embrace who I am. As you know, Leslie, I love Korean food. And I remember dieting. It was a lot of lettuce and chicken and a lot of like diet foods like carrot sticks and, kimchi and spinach and all the banchans that we eat in Korean and stews and stuff like that. I remember eating those things, but I would load up on the banchans, like marinated vegetables and side dishes that we have, and I would avoid the rice. But that loads up a lot of seasoning in your body. And so I've learned over time that was gaining weight for me. So I had to fend off my favorite foods. And I'll share with you as we go further into this podcast, but how that changed how I look at food today. Because food is what so much of my culture. It's my upbringing. It's my memory. We talk about this a lot. Like, it's my soul. And
Right.
sometimes I crave the foods that it provides me that comfort that I need in times of need, despite my logic saying, can't have this, you can't have that. Like, and I'm like, I just want to be free. And I'm able to maintain my fittest, the body and the number that I want without having to worry about all that. But I included all of that, and everything's in moderation. And it isn't until I learned what foods were right for me. And that takes a little bit more awareness. And that's what I guess you'll pull out of me today.
Yeah. I love that. That's great. I want to go back to your last year in school when you started to get sick. Can you talk a little bit more about that experience? What were the patterns you were noticing in yourself, and then leading up to the symptoms that you were experiencing at that time?
Yeah. So I just want to tell you a little bit, Leslie. I know you were on path to go get your registered dietitian degree, master's degree as well. And I just want to say, after I graduated as a registered dietitian, I worked in the hospital. And I remember all the hospital people, including doctors, physical therapists, all the ancillary service provider nurses would come to our dietitian's table to see what we're eating. And I remember amongst the 5 of us that were the registered dietitians for the hospital, we were all like, we had to be on our best behavior because we ate a lot in private, the things that we don't want to visually show other people because we're registered dietitians after all. And I know you and I talked about this, right? We had to like sort of be the part, and whatever that means. And it's a lot of restrictive foods and dieting constantly. And I remember in that era, or in that time, I'm dating myself, but I remember that was all the rage, is to be on a just diet after diet over and over again. So when I tell you, Leslie, we share, I've seen the full pendulum swing from the left to right in terms of diet. So nothing phases me anymore.
Right.
I just wanted to tell you that was the light that was an insightful thing that I experienced when we're sitting, and the dietitians would eat behind in the kitchen and then eat the things because we were so starved from all the pretense.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I had the same exact experience. I didn't go as far as you to RD school, but my bachelor's was in nutrition, and I felt the same way. You know, we'd be eating lunch in class and everybody would have the healthiest foods. And, you know, I've never been 100% a healthy eater, more in moderation. I love a good dessert every now and then. But for the most part, I would eat healthy, but I felt shameful, you know, that I couldn't eat certain foods around people. And then just being a nutrition major or an RD, I think other people also look at you like, oh, you must eat perfect all the time. Help me, help me. And I'm scared to be like, but I like a cookie every now and then.
Yeah. And I mean, today, you and I will talk about our journey together and how we get our patients healthy isn't about restriction anymore. And you and I love a good dessert. And sometimes we meet at a bakery to have the favorite desserts. Everything's in moderation. But you hit something for me. You said there was so much shame around what you're eating constantly. And it was like this striving to like measure up to your degree. And it's sort of like, didn't you feel like, and it was for me, like I felt like I had to lose myself in being a registered dietitian and just forgo all the things that I loved. And it was like, I know now I don't want to live like that anymore. And you came to that conclusion. You and I are so free with food now.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm so thankful for that too.
Yeah. So that was the thing. And then after the master's degree, I realized that wasn't all that was cut out to be, because one thing I noticed was, even though I would tell patients until I was blue in the face, and you experienced this, they would not, the compliance was so low. It was like I was a broken record to these patients, and they were just doing it because insurance paid. And they were diabetic patients. And then I needed something more. And so I got into physical therapy, and I jumped ship and, you know, went into the DPT program, which is a doctorate in physical therapy program, because that is exercise, right? And
Mm-hmm.
people who are hurt from exercise, I'm like, that keeps me moving. And the other thought was, I can't sit behind the desk because I'm not burning calories. As a
Mm-hmm.
physical therapist, you're doing. So that was another lifestyle that was important to me, is that
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to sit and really, back at the time, it was so silly, Leslie, but I thought, I'm going to have a big hiney because I'm going to pull down. And you and I both struggle today because we work so much from home, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, but that was my fear. And so I got into physical therapy. And the last year, to go back to your question, the last year of my degree, I remember, because physical therapy, getting into it was super hard back then, like super hard. It's even hard today too. But I mean, for me, it was like, oh my gosh, it was so much competition. And when I got in, I felt, number one, fraudulent. And that goes back to my feelings about my self-identity of not being good enough. And so I felt like I needed to work now, not double, triple, but quadruple my classmates. And because I wore my facade really well, the pretense of not studying and caring, but I was frantically studying when they were all sleeping. So let me tell you, there were so many sleepless nights because I felt like I needed more. I did get on the honor roll and I did do really, really well. Grades don't really matter, as you know, as long as you graduate, right? But
Mm-hmm.
of course you have to know. But for me, it was all about proving myself to everybody else that I'm not a fraud. It was
Mm-hmm.
possible to keep up. So in my last year, I started to get symptoms. And I remember studying in the lawn of my university. And I remember scratching myself. And I came home. My roommate back then was a nurse. And she looked at my back and she says, you broke out in hives. And I was sneezing a lot. So I went to the student healthcare center and they gave me some Benadryl and some corticosteroids. That was the start of my nightmare because the rashes pretty soon spread to my face, which I told you guys I'm so vain. I started to get alopecia, which hair loss. And so hair loss, skin going, because I can't cover it. And then I started to have rashes all over my joints, all over my body, and it would not subside. And so that's when I knew something was definitely up. And I was only 110 pounds to begin with. I lost like 15 pounds in like 2 weeks with all that rash. So I literally thought I was dying.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So where did you go after that? I'm assuming you started to see a doctor, right?
Yes. They couldn't figure it out. So I went to infectious disease. Well, I went to dermatology first because I'm like, get rid of this right now.
Mm-hmm.
And my hair is falling out. Please help me. And they sent me to infectious disease. Dermatology did all the testing. And then I went to gastroenterology. I went to hormone doctors. And finally, my chiropractic brother at the time, he said, Connie, I think you have lupus. And so he did a serology or lab testing. And sure enough, I tested positive. And then I was referred to the rheumatologists.
Okay.
At that time, Leslie, and you know this story, like my rheumatologist pretty much, said medication is going to be your best friend. You have to be on corticosteroids and certain medications to keep your health under control.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And take it easy.
Right. And it sounded like there wasn't much information available for you at that time, right? Even
No.
the lifespan was pretty minimal. Is
Yeah.
that what they told you?
Yeah. Basically, I had to go to Barnes and Noble. I went to the library, which was a university. It's Loma Linda University. It's a medical library. I searched for all the prognoses, all about lupus. There was minimal things back then. Well, there was a lot, but it was complicated verbiage that I wanted a book. And there was just one book out. And everything that I read and all the medical practitioners said lifespan, I remember it stuck with me 10 years.
Mm.
And they said it needs to be managed. It can be very scary. And I was still finishing up my internships at the time. And it was very important to me that I finish it after I got my symptoms under control, after I realized that those were my prognoses and I couldn't have a full-time job because it can cause a lot of fatigue. I started to look at alternative methods
Mm-hmm.
You know, I went to chiropractic, kinesiology, acupressure. And then finally, this doctor, traditional Chinese medicine, it's called Sasang. So 4 types of body, Sasang medicine. He pretty much typifies your body type based on your pulse. So I got it done there after, like, even traditional Chinese medicine doctors, I went to like 5 or 6. Some of them like took my pulse and said, can't believe you're vertical. You should be on the floor, because my blood pressure was so low. But this particular one precisely said, we cure lupus. So I went to him and he felt my pulse and he said, you need to be eating meats, not just any meat, but red meat. And I remember feeling devastated because that was my identity, was being a vegan,
Mm.
you know?
Yeah.
And I remember in my mind, like, does that mean I'm going to gain weight? That was the first thing in my mind.
Mm-hmm.
But I got over it because I realized me being alive is much more important. So I started to add meat back in, did everything he told me. He told me I needed to take deep breaths first thing in the morning, that my lungs, kidneys, and all the elements in the body is not properly aligned and balanced. And he spoke these languages, and I was fascinated because, Leslie,
Okay.
the story, after about 6 months of very expensive tinctures that he prescribed me that I had to take, my antibodies were next to none.
Wow.
Yeah.
So I kind of want you to talk a little bit about, you went from doctor to doctor in conventional medicine and nobody was giving you the answers you were looking for. They could only give you medication. That's what caused you to look to alternative methods. And knowing you, Dr. Connie, you're very ambitious, very go-getter, and you don't settle for less. So, and thinking back to a prior brand you had, Lupus Rebel, right? You're such a rebel. And so what caused you, basically the answers that the doctors told you wasn't good enough for you, like take it easy, that wasn't okay with you, right?
No, I decided you don't get to tell me how I should live. I get to live on my terms. And so I decided to keep all the tinctures from my rheumatologist because I'm supposed to tell him everything. But when you're telling me I have to be on corticosteroids, and I knew the side effects of corticosteroids, number one concern, Leslie, was weight gain, wound pain. I didn't want that.
Right.
And diabetes. And I'm like, I don't want any of that. So I knew there had to be a better way. And so I started to do my own and studied Sasang medicine. And remember when you first came to work with me as an intern, I don't know if you remember, but I used to have Sasang medicine was integrated within my system. You had to take a questionnaire and, I did the 4 types of body, and then we had a diet for it, remember?
Yeah.
And so I remember doing all the things experimentally that way. And so, yeah, that's how I kind of went on board. And whenever people tell me I can't, and I'm like, I'm going to figure it out, I'll do it and I'll show you. I'll just show them. But I think that's just the way I am. And I think you said it, like, I don't like it when somebody tells me what I can or cannot do,
Yeah. So now you're at the point where all your antibodies were gone after working with the TCM doc, right? So what did life look like at that point? It probably felt like a brand new life.
Yeah, well, Leslie, I was dating this guy because I was a self-proclaimed like single. Like, I didn't want to get married. I didn't want to live like my mom. And my mom was living vicariously through me, and she wanted me to be, single the rest of my life too, just not have to take care of a husband like she did all her life. And I think at that time I gave up on myself because 10 years stuck with me, and that fear was still there, even though I was doing everything to live on my own terms. So then I was at the brink of marriage with this guy, and I remember being rejected by his family because I have this incurable disease. And again, medical side of his family said, do not marry her. She's going to die within 10 years. It's not something I want you to take. And so when they finally agreed to take me on, there again, I was not worthy. And I'm given this opportunity. I have to do the best I can. And I married for the wrong reasons. And sure enough, my nightmare began because even during my honeymoon, That's when I got pregnant with my first son. We got in a fight, a very bad fight, even until like fights never ceased, right? For many different reasons. We just weren't compatible, you know?
Mhm.
And I had my first son, and we moved to Georgia from California. I was isolated from all my family. So you can imagine the stress, right?
Yeah. Did that have any effect on your health again?
Oh, yeah. I had a flare, first time involving my kidneys. Prior to that, it was just all the external stuff,
Mhm.
kidneys. And it meant that had dangerously high protein levels in my urine. And so I had to go on corticosteroids at high levels. And it's what I fear the most is it gave me such moon face. And it was awful, awful, awful. And I had to go through chemotherapy. And then again, doctors telling me, you can't have any kids. You just stay put and maybe work part-time, be a mom, but you need to freeze your eggs. You can't be pregnant again, is what they said. Well, 4 years later, careful planning, had my second son successfully.
Mhm.
And so he's considered my miracle baby. My nephrologist will tell you he's my miracle baby because I did it on my terms, because he said I couldn't. Super healthy. But again, 8 months after, at this time, I had my wellness business that I wanted to share with the world. And that's when my dreams began. I was dreaming big, and I wanted to help women like me who are struggling with different interpersonal relationships. It wasn't as clear as it is today about my struggles, about my interpersonal relationships. But that's where I was. And I know it's a lot. Leslie, you just asked me, where were you? Where was your mind space? Well, fast forward.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. So at this time you have a full practice, full business, 2 kids, and a marriage, but I
Rocky
don't
marriage.
okay. So you were trying to balance your health, your
I was
kids, your business, your marriage.
Yeah, but you know what, Leslie? What I was doing was I was escaping my terrible marriage, and my way of staying busy was education. Like, I love learning, as you know, I never cease.
Mhm.
And I wanted to do different things to keep my mind busy and productive. Productivity is huge. Again, self-worth, right? So I
Mhm.
have this business. I wanted to serve my patients well. So I was going across the country learning all the things: trigger point dry needling, traditional Chinese medicine, Pilates, yoga, you name it. And then the way I found functional medicine was when my ex-husband and I had difficulty with sexual desires after my second one. And I was not only so stressed, I was super busy, super stressed to the max. And I had 2 infants in tow.
Mhm.
And I felt like I never wanted to have intimacy. And so I went to go see if something's wrong with me, to check my hormones. And so I sought out a functional medical doctor, which I thought would have all the answers for me.
Mhm.
And she just gave me some progesterone, tested some hormones and gave me progesterone, told me that I had some type of what is that I'm looking for? MTHFR.
Mhm.
A It's a genetic defect.
SNP.
Yeah, SNP.
Mhm.
Full nucleotide. What's
Polymorphism.
polymorphism? Thank you, Leslie.
Mhm.
And I remember I thought that was the answer. I'm like, oh my gosh, you mean all my answers are going to be in the supplements?
Mm.
I went gung ho and I tried that. I'm like, I'm going to learn this to the max. And I enrolled through the Institute of Functional Medicine. It took me 7 years to complete, but I finally completed the Institute of Functional Medicine certification program. And then I realized something, and you know my story with that. Like, there's so much focus on the disease or symptoms. And what's functional and holistic is getting away from the medication, but you still use some medications focused in on the SNPs and certain bionutrients, or
Mhm.
stool testing to check your pro and prebiotics. And
Right.
all the things. And I felt like chasing after a problem doesn't ever solve because, as you know, Leslie, I always talk about this. My emotions were really dependent on the circumstances of my life. Well, the circumstances of my life was built on my interpersonal relationships with my spouse at the time. So no matter what I did, functional medical doctor or not, hormones, bioidentical hormones, all the things that I tried, supplements to the max and creams, whatever, it didn't help because my relationship wasn't healed with him. And I was always going back to this stressful situation because we're always struggling and fighting about something.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's when I realized, wow, it's so much deeper than this.
Mm-hmm. Right. So eventually you had to end that, right? Because you realized your health wasn't getting any better.
Yeah. So I said, you know, this was from 2008 to 2014. I think I just sort of lived like a zombie and worked my butt off. I was accused of being a workaholic, and I agree. I can be a workaholic, as you know. But I remember enrolling in 2014 in yoga teacher training program because an Ashtanga yoga at that, because one, it was hard. Number two, I needed something else to focus on. Number three, I wanted so much to find my true self. And that's how my yoga journey began, and which revealed so much, and which is where we are today, right? Which led to this.
Yeah. So at this point, you've had education and training in psychology, nutrition, physical therapy, functional medicine, Pilates, and yoga.
Yeah, we forgot to mention Pilates came right after my firstborn.
Yeah.
My body back to get me fit and trim because I was so scared of gaining the weight and staying. Like after 10 years, like I still complain about my baby's weight. I didn't want to be the statistic.
So what did you want to do with all that education?
You know, as you know, Leslie, it was my personal curiosity because I felt like I'm not getting my answers in acupuncture. I'm not getting my answers with a chiropractor, which I was seeking. I'm not getting my answers in yoga, all of it anyway. I'm not getting my answers in nutrition therapy. I'm not getting all the answers in functional medicine. It was all the things that lifestyle, right? It's our thoughts, our emotions that drive what we're going to eat, what we're going to do, and how we're going to value ourselves enough to have healthy relationships with other people. And so I didn't know, and you know, Leslie, you've been working with me now, 7 years, and we've been kind of going in circles, me seeking for the sweet spot. And because I'm always complicating things and I want to be evidence-based, I realized when I found mysticism at the brink of COVID, I started to tie in everything through our current programs under functional yoga medicine because I'm like, this is it. I'm uniquely qualified, not only as a practitioner who didactically in theory understand it, but I realized you need to really experience the healing yourself. And all the journey that I've been on doing Pilates, psychology, nutrition, physical therapy, Pilates, yoga, functional medicine, in that order, right?
Right.
And yoga. And practicing with my patients and in my programs, I realized the one thing is self-awareness. Self-worth needs to be reclaimed for us to be true to ourselves. And only then can we have healthy relationships with other people.
Yeah, I think that's huge. And that's a big part of why I love what we do, because we go so much deeper, and our patients will tell us themselves, we're not just changing them on the surface level, eat this, not that, take this, right? But we really help them uncover that psychology. And when we brought the coaching in, because I remember I came to you and after seeing some, nutrition clients, I can tell people what to eat, but like you mentioned earlier, the compliance wasn't there. There's got to be something else. And finally we discovered the, coaching as a modality. And I think that's when everything changed, because it's no more how much do I know, but what can I help this person uncover that will actually help them transform their life long lasting, not just for a week or for a couple months.
And here's the thing, Leslie, I think what you're trying to say is we learned that healing is an inside job.
Mm-hmm.
Unless we enlist ourselves or the patients to do it themselves and guide them in the proper way, nothing will ever change if we tell them what to do. And yet we're conditioned in school to seek that path.
Right.
Clear path where everybody's going, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, guess what? We're not everybody, right? We're uniquely different and special. And no matter where you are in life, sick, poor, rich, or healthy, we're all same human beings having the same human experience. And what I learned too was whether it be yoga, functional medicine, physical therapy, so many practitioners are so focused on certifications, being worthy and knowing. And you are on that path too. Like, I need to be certified.
Mm-hmm.
I need to learn this. And the path that everybody says I should be, right?
Right.
But we learned pretty quickly, it's about application. And there's not enough practitioners who are trained in the application who can truly help patients in real way from their vantage point of where they are honoring the patient as the special person who dictates where we go. I realize so deeply, it's not about what you and I know and what we seek more knowledge of that's going to make us help patients. But the real work is in integrating all aspects of psychology, all aspects of nutrition, all aspects of physical medicine and functional medicine, Pilates and yoga to help our patients and clients sort of solve their own puzzle
Mm-hmm.
in the way that suits them. In essence, helping them finding themselves finally.
Mm-hmm.
About healing from the inside out is the only way. And that's what we emphasize is self-awareness is the only way. And most people don't do the work enough. And the hardest work is from within and really shedding the light or shining the light to within to figure out exactly what your body needs. And that's really the essence of our program. And really, I always tell you this in our team meetings too. It's all about integrating. It doesn't matter the dogmatic ways of doing physical therapy, doing nutrition, what's considered healthy, whatever. We have to do it with the compass of everybody we serve from within. And the most edifying thing you and I talk about is the satisfaction when they become independent and free from all disease and symptoms and really enhance and elevate their lives in all aspects because it's all connected, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think you put it perfectly. And that's what functional yoga medicine is all about. So next week is going to be great, part 3, because we'll dive deeper into functional medicine and how it actually looks when the patient applies it in their life, right?
Yeah. That's good.
All right.
I can't wait to share more. I hope this is edifying for people. So if you're listening, please DM us and let us know your struggles and what you're going through. What are some insightful takeaways that you learned from this? I've never really fully shared my full story. And here's Leslie, who knows me so well, guiding me through sharing this with you. And we only hope that this is edifying and elevating for you and your own lives, because I hope you see the self-reflection, like we're all reflecting ourselves in each other. And unless we have self-love from within, we can't heal. And that's the part where Leslie and I are so hell-bent on getting through to each and every one of you from the love, deep love that we have for all of you. Thank you so much, Leslie, and I'll see you guys all next week.
Thank you, Dr. Connie.